ॐ श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम गोपिका जीवनस्मरणं गोविन्द गोविन्द सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय। शुक्लां भरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। नमो नमः सद्गुरुभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो नमः सद्गुरुभ्यो नमो नमः। सच्चिदानन्दरूपाय विश्वोत्पत्त्यादिहेतवे तापत्रयविनाशाय श्रीकृष्णाय वयं नुमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुः तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। यस्वानुभावमखिलश्रुतिसारमेकम् अध्यात्मदीपम् अतितितीर्षतां तमोन्धम् संसारिणां करुणयाः पुराणगुह्यं तं व्याससूनुमुपयामि गुरुं मुनीनां। योगीन्द्राय नमस्तस्मै शुकाय ब्रह्मरूपिणे संसारसर्पदष्टं यो विष्णुरातम् अमूमुचत् कालव्यालमुखग्रास त्रासनिर्नाशहेतवे. Sorry, I don't know what happened. My thing stopped. My wireless got disconnected for some reason. Okay, you guys can hear me, right?
Now,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
perfect. Okay, I know where I stopped. So,
Six,
We
right?
were all already reading by ourselves.
yeah, no worries. Yeah. योगीन्द्राय नमस्तस्मै शुकाय ब्रह्मरूपिणे संसारसर्पदष्टं यो विष्णुरातम् अमूमुचते कालव्यालमुखग्रास त्रासनिर्नाशहेतवे श्रीमद्भागवतं शास्त्रं कलौ. I don't know why
இத கேக்குறதுக்கு வந்து அதுக்கே பிடிக்கல போல இருக்கு.
I don't know why my Wi-Fi keeps getting disconnected.
Rajesh, you didn't hear
Anyway.
what Priya said.
ஹாட்ஸ்பாட்ல போட்டுக்கோங்க.
Hotspot தான் போட்டிருக்கேன் because it lost my house Wi-Fi for whatever reason.
Oh, okay.
So I'm in my hotspot. Anyway, I'll try continue. श्रीमद्भागवतं शास्त्रं कलौकीरेण भाषितं एतस्मादपरं किञ्चित् मनःशुद्ध्यै न विद्यते जन्मान्तरे भवेत् पुण्यं तदा भागवतं लभेत् ज्ञानवैराग्यसम्पूर्णान् हरिभक्तिपरायणान् पूर्वाचार्यातहं वन्दे सम्प्रदायप्रवर्तकान् भगवन्नाम साम्राज्य लक्ष्मी सर्वस्वविग्रहं श्रीमद्बोधेन्द्रयोगीन्द्र देशिकेन्द्रम् उपास्महे कलिकालोचितं धर्मं नाम संकीर्तनात्मकं निर्णेतुम् अवतीर्णं तं प्रेमिकं सद्गुरुं भजे हरे रामेति कृष्णेति नाम संकीर्तनं सदा लोकक्षेमाय कुर्वन्तं प्रेमिकं सद्गुरुं भजे जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयादितरतश्चार्तेषभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्महृदाय आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि धर्मः प्रोज्झितकैतवोऽत्र परमो निर्मत्सराणां सतां वेद्यं वास्तवमत्र वस्तु शिवदं तापत्रयोन्मूलनं श्रीमद्भागवते महामुनिकृते किं वा परैरीश्वरः सद्यो हृद्यवरुध्यतेऽत्र कृतिभिः शुश्रूषिभिस्तत्क्षणात् निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं शुकमुखात् अमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् श्रीमद्भागवताख्योऽयं प्रत्यक्षः कृष्ण एव हि स्वीकृतोऽसि मया नाथ मुख्यत्वं भवसागरे मनोरथो मदीयोऽयं सफलः सर्वथा त्वया निर्विघ्नेनैव कर्तव्यो दासोऽहं तव केशव श्रीहरये नमः श्रीहरये नमः श्रीहरये नमः गोपिका जीवनस्मरणं गोविन्द गोविन्द सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय. Okay, welcome everyone. Good evening. Let me quickly see if I can shift to the house Wi-Fi, okay? So in case I get disconnected, I'll be right back. I'm at the hotspot right now, but Perfect. All right. Hope you can hear me okay. All right. So make sure it's recording. Yeah. Okay. So before we get started quickly, anybody wants to take just 2 minutes, just summarize what we learned so far of the story? Just okay. All right. Okay, go ahead.
நான் சொல்றதா இல்ல நீங்க சொல்ல போறேன்னு நினைச்சேன்.
இல்ல just last classல என்ன கத்துட்டோம்னு சொல்லிட்டு 2
நான்
minutes.
பயங்கரமான படி ஸ்டூடெண்ட்.
just to I don't want to repeat it. Go ahead. Yeah.
இல்ல சாரி
Third
நான்
version.
சொல்லல, நான் கேட்கறதுக்கு தான் ரெடி.
Anyone wants?
I can
Anybody?
do
Doesn't
that. I can do
okay,
that.
go ahead, Shanti. Yeah.
Okay. Prachina, I can speak in Tamil or in English?
You can speak in Tamil. I think
Prachina Barhishu was too much into, I mean, what is that?
Karma Kanda.
Karma Kanda, and because he was too much into it, Narada wanted to go and tell him that he's not supposed to be doing it, and if he does it, the whole part, I mean, like he cannot expect anything in return. So he's asking him to limit whatever he is doing. So he's trying to tell a story of. Puranjana to him, and then he's explaining that there are two, Puranjana and Abhigyata, they are two friends, and Abhigyata and Puranjana is a king. He travels so much and he ends up in a place which he likes very much. This place has got a bigger gate and Navadwara in that city, and he meets a beautiful woman in that the pair Marandutan on the city pair.
Puranjani. You can just call her Puranjani.
The city's name, you said something, right?
The city's name is Navadwarapuri.
Okay, Navadwarapuri. The city has got this place has got a big gate, one gate, and Navadwara, and he meets a beautiful woman there, and he proposes to her. He wants to get married to her, and then she is also accepting his proposal, and they get married, and she controls him on
she has some people around her. Remember, she has people. She has like 10 bodyguards.
She has 100 people, right?
10 bodyguards, one main bodyguard, and hundreds of women, people, support people. Yeah.
Support
Each
people.
of them have hundreds wives. Padche.
100 wives. The wives, they are essentially helpers for her. Essentially, that's what it is. Yeah. Okay. And then the 5-hooded snake. Yeah.
And there's a 5-hooded snake, and he likes her. They get married, and he becomes like he loves her so much, and then he kind of becomes a kind of slave to her. Like he doesn't want to do anything, whatever she doesn't like. And one day he goes in a chariot, and then he, without letting her know, without her knowledge, he goes and goes for a hunting and comes back. She's very upset about it with him, and then he says, "I won't do this again without your knowledge." And then he tries to patch up with her, and she says, "Okay, fine, this time it's okay, but don't do this again." That's where we stop.
Exactly. Perfect. Okay.
Super. Shanti, அடுத்த Bhagavatham class.
Okay, let me just share. Okay, you can see the screen, right? You can see the screen, right? Slide, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so that's where we left, right? So after, reconciling with her, where he apologizes and everything. So Puranjani, the queen, finally, she regains her influence over him, right? And so what happens then is, so she also goes, gets ready. Let's just advance it. So she also goes, gets ready. She comes back well decked. She's looking more attractive right now because she knows that she has him under control. And they both spend a lot of time in each other's company. She satisfies all the desires that Puranjana have. They spend a long time together. As this life continues for him, right, he gets so immersed in this married life that he loses the awareness of everything else that is happening, and time is passing by, right? And every day that passes in our lifespan, we are actually cutting our life by one day. And Puranjana is so absorbed with the Puranjani and everything that he's doing that, his life continued to decrease because we all have limited life, but he was not getting anything spiritual. He was continuing to, do this, right? Suddenly 1 year, multiple years passes by. So with this, he continues. Now, Bhagavatam, again, is very specifically not telling that you should not spend time, because Bhagavatam, like we saw, Kapila, we saw Archie and Prithu. They all led grihastha lives. It's not telling you should not lead grihastha life, but it says that you should not get so sucked into it that you lose your primary purpose and the primary understanding. So that's what is actually happening. So now, for them, they have 1,100 sons or some ridiculous number of sons, right? They have a lot of sons, they have a lot of daughters. And naturally, what will Puranjana do when he has so many sons and so many daughters? They grow up. His next step for him is he has to get all these sons married. So he finds qualified wives for all the sons. He has to find husbands for all his daughters. He finds husbands for all his daughters. They all get children. So essentially, that entire kingdom of Panchala, Navadvarapuri is the city, Panchala is the kingdom. That entire kingdom of Panchala is just flooded with Puranjana's people, right? Children and grandchildren and everybody, right? So, and this is essentially the classic example of what everybody, right? He starts with some desire, then he gets married, then his priority becomes taking care of the children, then his priority becomes getting his children married. Now he has grandchildren, so he continues to focus on the grandchildren's as well. And what these children and grandchildren do is they essentially, because they all grow up rich, because he's a king, they end up plundering all his wealth, right? All the riches and all the things which are there in the kingdom, all these children and grandchildren, they just don't care about it. They just start plundering. So Narada is telling Prachina Barhishat that exactly like how you, Prachina Barhishat, decided to conduct all these yajnas because you want more things. When Puranjana wants more things now, because all his wealth and riches are going down because of his children and grandchildren. So he performs more yajnas, he performs more rituals, all of them with an intention of getting more things, right? And he also does a lot of animal sacrifices like all he does. He's also getting stuck into this karma kanda, right? With which is the same thing that happened to Prachina Bargishat is happening to Puranjana also. Time keeps going. Now, sorry. Yeah. So now what happens is all of a sudden a new character enters, right? In the Gandharva Loka. So Gandharva is there in the upper planetary realm. So in the Gandharva Loka, there's a ruler called as Chandavega. So this Chandavega, he's going around, attacking and trying to gain kingdom and everything. So what this Chandavega does is he has about 700 plus soldiers, big, very strong soldiers, men and women, Gandharvas, Gandharvis refer to the female Gandharvas. So the Gandharvas and the Gandharvis, they all come and they look at this Puranjana's kingdom, Panchala, which we said is like very beautiful, right? It has got this Vaidurium, gold and platinum, all of these things. They say this is the kingdom they want. So they come and start plundering the kingdom of Panchala. Now, remember, who is protecting the kingdom of Panchala all these years is a five-hooded snake, right? So the five-hooded snake is continuing to fight the battle with all of the 700 soldiers, and it's continuously kind of battle. Now, as the snake is continuing to fight the battle with these things, Puranjana doesn't care. Puranjana is busy spending his time with his family, spending his time with Puranjani, and his life is going on because he's confident the five-hooded snake always takes care of everything that is there, and that is continuing to this. So with this keeps on going, and then he's more and more of his life passes by, and then he's now coming towards the end of his life. So at this time, another new character now enters. So there is a mysterious woman who's actually coming from the Brahma Loka. She's a very famous, mysterious woman. So this mysterious woman is descending down she's looking for a husband. The problem is anybody she associates with, they essentially get destroyed. So she literally has a name called as Durbhaga, which means the unfortunate one. So whoever she comes in contact with, that person is going to get destroyed. That person gets destroyed. So nobody wants to marry her. So Narada says that this Durbhaga, once when he came to earth from Brahmaloka, this Durbhaga approaches Narada. And Durbhaga says, Narada, you are like a complete celibate person, right? You're a pure brahmachari. And Durbhaga gets very attracted to Narada and tells Narada that, Narada, I want to marry you, right? I'm in lust with you, right? I want to marry you. And Narada says, look, I'm a brahmachari, I'm completely celibate, I'm not going to be interested in these things. So she curses Narada, saying that you will only remain in one, you will not have a house to yourself. Now, the same thing, we're going to see another curse come to Narada later by the sons of Pracheta, so I'll cover it at that point. But here she curses Narada. So Narada says, look, that is fine. You can curse me all you want. I'm not going to get married. But He says, I know another person who you can actually get married. So he refers this Durbaga to a person who is actually the king of the Yavanas. Yavanas are generally, in the later world, they are the people in the Greek are called Yavanas, because in Krishna Avataram, there's a person who comes from there, who's a Yavana. But Yavana also means people who are like meat eaters and very low class kind of people are also called Yavanas in general, but Yavana also refers to the Greek people. So he says there is a king of these Yavanas who will be a perfect companion. You go meet him. So this Durbaga goes to the king of the Yavanas, and then she makes a very formal proposal saying that, look, I've descended from Brahmaloka, I have a lot of power, and we know that you are a great person, I really want to actually marry you. And then she proposes to this Yavana. Yavana is a smart guy. So he says that, look, I know who you are. I know you are a very inauspicious person. So he says, I cannot marry you. But like how a villain in a movie thinks, this Yavana is thinking, if she's an inauspicious person, I don't need to marry her, but I can use her to my benefit, right? I can use her to actually get rid of people, and then I can actually take over. So this Yavana then strikes a deal with this lady, who's called Kalakanya. So he strikes a deal with her saying that I have a brother called as Prajwara. So that is the other character here, right? Prajwara. So he says, you go, I will make you, oh, Kalakanya, my sister. And then I will marry you to my brother, Prajwara, right? And what we will do is you and Prajwara go. You go Kalakanya, and then you get in contact with kings. And when you get in contact with kings, the kings are sure to get destroyed because she's a destructor. When the kings get destroyed, Prajwara and his army will then go and attack the king. So it's easy to win over. So that way, I will go conquer over the whole world. So this is a plan that this Yavana king actually puts together. And these three people actually would do a tie-up, right? So with this, chapter 27 comes to an end where these three people do a tie-up and decide to go forward. And in parallel, Chandavega has actually attacked Puranjana's kingdom, and the five-headed snake is fighting with him. So we'll go to 4.28. So in 4.28, it starts with this Prajwara,
Yeah,
the
I think
Kalakanya.
question.
Go ahead.
Is the name of that king Baya in the previous slide?
Yes, sorry, I think my internet connection is unstable. Yes, the king, the Yavana, the king of the Yavana who the Kalakanya approaches, his name is Baya. His
Okay.
brother's name is Prajwara. So the Baya, Prajwara, and Kalakanya, those are the three people who are there.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Yeah. So this Baya, Kalakanya, Prajwara, they go around conquering all the world, and they also end up landing in the same place, Navadvarapuri, because they see this beautiful kingdom of Panchala, and they have heard about this Navadvarapuri. So they also start attacking because that country is full of comforts and enjoyment, right? Now, the city is already, the five-hooded snake has been continuing to battle this Chandavega. So over time, the five-hooded snake is also becoming very weak because it's continuing to battle single-handedly, holding off this Chandavega. So when this Kalakanya and Prajwara, they start attacking everything in there, everything begins to go down within that kingdom, right? Slowly, everybody, the people start fighting now because because the snake is busy. So these people start entering from all the 9 gates which are there in the city, the Navadwarapuri. So all the people in the city start trying to fight these people. And, the city's activity starts breaking down. The soldiers all enter in. So it is just completely trouble, which is actually in there. Now, this Puranjana, who is still continues to be attached with his family. Now, he is actually getting overwhelmed, because he's so busy with his family life, because he has all these people fighting, soldiers fighting and everything. But with all of these people attacking, he's like in a crisis right now. And what happens is this Kalakanya comes in, and she then comes in contact with this Puranjana. So the moment this Kalakanya comes in contact with Puranjana, remember, she's a Durbaga, right? So the moment she comes in contact with him, all the strength and the energy and the charm and everything this Puranjana has starts to gradually decline because he's becoming more and more weak. So he loses the vigor and the energy and the youth that he actually has. Although he's becoming more and more old or becoming more and more weak with this, his desires doesn't stop, because his wealth is going away. People are plundering, all these cities are getting attacked, but he still wants to get engaged with all of this. So one day this Puranjana looks around and he sees that this entire city is in disorder. And, because his wealth is going away, because they are plundering his daughters, his children, his grandchildren, nobody likes him anymore because he has lost all his wealth. He has lost all his youth. He's lost all his energy. He's of absolutely no value to all of them. So even his wife, right, Puranjani, also becomes very indifferent to him. So this is very similar, in Devi Mahatmyam, right? We have the Vaishya, they're called Samadhi. So the Samadhi also has the same problem. He says that I used to have so much money and everything. When I lost my money, my wife and my children, they started hating me. They didn't like me. So that's why he comes over to the forest where he meets the king, Surata, right? And even Samadhi says the same thing. Even though my wife and children hate me and they don't have any value, my mind still is attached to my wife and children. Why is that? That's what Devi Mahatmyam starts. So it's exactly same thing, right? This Puranjana, he's having the same problem. He's still not able to give away his interest with his wife and family, and he's still continuing to focus on it. His desires have not this thing. Now he's also confused. So he's confused and frustration. All this is going on. So finally, it is all Navadvarapuri is coming to an end right now. The crisis is in the final stage. The city is just badly damaged. Nothing works in the city. But Puranjana does not want to leave it, right? So, for example, when people live in these massive mansions or old palaces, right? Because they're so in love with their house. And when the house will start deteriorating, but people don't want to leave the house. You can see that in India, a lot of old house, people still want to leave because they're so attached to the house they are in. So similarly, Puranjana is so attached to Navadvarapuri, he doesn't want to leave the city, even though the city is in a crumbling state. And now these people have taken over the entire city. So Prajwara, along with Bhaya, they essentially set the city on fire. They essentially fire up the entire city. They destroy the kingdom, right? And now this, what started as an invasion, they plundered all his wealth. Now they're just going and destroying the city. The city is just completely beginning to destroy. As this fire is spreading, everybody is in a disaster. So when this happens, the five-headed snake, which was still continuing to battle, it is looking at how the people in the city are suffering. He sees the damage that Kalakanya has started. And this five-headed snake, remember that Puranjani said that, she said, I don't know from how I came, right? That's what she started. When he came and asked, who are you? She said, I really don't know who I am. I was just born, right? I was just there. But I know one thing, these people around me have always been taking care of me. And this five-hooded snake has always been taking care of the city. So this five-hooded snake has been taking care of the city for hundreds of years or whatever. It is seeing that that city is completely getting burned out, right? And there's nothing the snake could actually do to save the city, because even the snake is not able to live in the city anymore. And the snake wants to escape. It wants to fight. It's not able to escape because these people are not letting it escape. It cannot fight. So the snake is also in tears. The snake is just crying out loud because it is seeing its inhabitants getting destroyed. It is also getting destroyed, and it is just in a helpless state, right? So with this entire thing becomes a huge mess for all these people who are actually there. As the city is falling, Puranjana, he's ready, he has to leave. He has no other choice, but he's still thinking about, oh my God, I had created so much wealth. The city had so many golds and I had so many mansions in the city. Everything has come to an end. I had such a great family. The family is coming to an end. His mind cannot let those things go that he actually had. Finally, he then starts thinking about his wife, right? He thinks that what will my wife do? Because he cannot take his wife. His wife is stuck there right now. So he's thinking that what will I do with my wife? How will my wife take care of all the children and the family members? He has concern for them. Then he thinks about his children, saying that what will my children and my grandchildren and daughters and son-in-laws, what will all do? He thinks about how he and his wife were so much in love. He only did what his wife wanted. She wouldn't do anything without him. So it goes through a long description of what he's going through, which anybody, they say, like I always give the story of when you are in a plane and your plane is about to crash suddenly, all these things run through your mind, right? What will my spouse do? What will my family do? Because Puranjana is now approaching his death, right? So as he's approaching his death, because he knows he's not going to be able to live, so he continues to think about his wife non-stop. And even at this point, he does not call his friend for help because he's lost touch with his friend, Abhignata, right? So he continues to think about these things. And finally, Puranjana is taken away. So all this, the Prajwara and Bhaya, all of those stuff, the Yavana Raja, they all take Puranjana away. So when Puranjana is getting dragged like an animal, because he's a king who has completely surrendered, they're dragging him. When he does, all his followers have to come. The five-hooded snake is captured. The five-hooded snake has to follow Puranjana because the king is captured. So it has to kind of follow it, and it can do nothing about it. So once all people have left and there's no more protection, the city is completely burnt to ashes. So this whole, Panchala and the Navadvarapuri is just completely gone and completely burnt into ashes. So even in this point, last point at his time of death, when he's getting dragged by these Yavanas, he's running through his mind all the things he's actually done in his life, right? And then he remembers all the sins he has committed, like we spoke about all the animals he went in and killed mercilessly. So all those things are running through his mind. And he said, I've committed so many sins in this life of mine. All right, my life is about to come to an end because now he has nothing he can do. There's no more life left for him. So all those thoughts are actually running in his mind. So now, so anyway, sorry, I forgot to move the slide. So yeah, he's conquered. He thinks about all of them. He never calls to Avijñata for help, right? Now, I wanted to pause here because I think we are in a very important state of the story. And before we go further, because a lot of you have asked me a lot of questions in the past about various things, right? And I want any of you to answer. This is a simple one-line answer, right? So that I want to make sure you understood this concept before I go further on this, right? So did Puranjana choose to enter Navadvarapuri or was he forced into Navadvarapuri?
He chose, right?
He chose to
He
enter.
chose to enter.
He chose. Nobody put him into that. It was his choice, right? And what attracted Puranjana to Navadvarapuri? Why did he come to Navadvarapuri? He was in so many places. Why did he like Navadvarapuri?
His senses.
Because all the
No, he
Yeah,
felt whatever he wanted was there.
there,
His
yeah.
mind was attracted towards
The woman he met.
all the
He was
things
always seeking for something more, right? And I thought this was his next progression.
correct, exactly. He went to small kingdoms, one Dwarapuri, two Dwarapuri. He was never happy. He wanted a bigger kingdom, right? Now, how would you describe Puranjana's relationship with Puranjani, right? Was it just companionship as husband and wife, or did he, like, I think you guys already know that, but yeah,
Dependent on us.
he
Slave
was
on
fully
them.
dependent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, his friend Avijñata, right, who we said initially always bailed him out in his earlier life, but ever since he met this Puranjani, he never called Avijñata.
Correct. Yes.
He did not seek help. That's why.
Yeah, that's what. Why?
No.
Why he
He
never
forgot
I
turned?
think
about
during
him.
good times, he did not even,
because
think
he
of Avijñata, and then during his difficult times, he didn't want to go and ask for help.
Yeah,
he
but
was
why did
so
he not go?
lust, I
absorbed in
guess.
his
Remember him.
good times
He's
that he did not remember.
it's all because of lust.
Because of Puranjani, right? Because he was
Yeah.
so attached to Puranjani that
He
he
forgot
never
everyone,
thought.
like he did not keep in touch with
Or
him.
he thought
forgot.
he might not like her, like him going and asking a favor from his friends.
She never said no.
Or because she was so dominant, she wanted everything from him. Not
Yes.
He
even
for-
one bit
I
of
think
him.
I think மறந்து போயிட்டார்னு நினைக்கிறேன். He forgotten about him.
ஏன் மறந்து போனார்னா புரிஞ்சினால மறந்து போனார்.
He was so attached to
He
her.
was head over
He was so
heels in
attached.
love
He was
with
just busy with
Puranjani.
Puranjani. He forgot his friends, right? That's what it is, right?
That is
No.
how every husband should be. Forget every friend that they have.
ரொம்ப
We'll come to
என்ஜாய்
that.
பண்ணிட்டார் லைஃப. ரொம்ப என்ஜாய் பண்ணிட்டார் லைஃப.
ஆமா. So next into question, யோசிச்சு சொல்லுங்க. Even if Navadvarapuri was not there, can Puranjana as a king still exist in this world?
Yeah.
Yeah, he can.
Yes.
He can, right? He
Yes.
just decided to live in Navadvarapuri. He doesn't have to live, but he decided. Okay. Can he also? I know he loves Puranjani, but can he exist without Puranjani?
Yes.
He
Yes.
was existing
Yes.
without her.
Yes.
It is independent, but he's just attached to her. But he doesn't need to have Puranjani to live, right? Like he may
Correct.
not,
Yes.
he may likes to be, but he's independent, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that's fine. So because I this is the important thing, because I'll come back to whatever answers you all gave here in a minute.
ஐயோ தப்பா
Last question கேட்கலையே. Last
இல்ல
question.
because நீங்க எனக்கு நிறைய questions கேட்டிருக்கீங்க பழைய கிளாஸ்ல எல்லாம், அதுக்கு எல்லாம் ஆன்சர் கிடைக்க
ராஜேஷ்,
போறீங்க. So
இந்த question bank people அவள மட்டும் question கேளு நீ.
so okay, so now his time is coming to an end, right? Puranjana's life is about to depart. So even in the final moments, like we said, he continues to think about his wife. He continues to think about Puranjani, worrying about her, right? So you all know this, Priya Arun knows, this is this statement from Bhagavad Gita, right? Where Krishna says, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajat yante kalaivaram tam tamaivaiti kaunteya sadatat bhava bhavitaha. It says, whatever you are thinking at the time of giving up your body, whatever is running through your mind, that's exactly what you're going to
What you
become
will
in your
get.
next.
Like Jadabharadar.
Jadabharadar.
Yes. Bharatara is also Charitam. We're going to see same thing here in SB 2.1.6. It says you do etavan sankhya yoga abhyam, whether you do sankhya, whether you do yoga, swadharma parinishtaya, you do your own dharma. This is from Bhagavatam when we did earlier. Janma labha param pumsam ante narayana smriti. That's why you see, it doesn't matter what path you follow. You follow karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, ashtanga yoga, service to people, doesn't matter. In the end, you should think of Narayana. That is the primary goal, right? Now, Puranjana gave up his body thinking about his wife. So what happens in his next birth?
He was born as
Born as his wife.
Right?
And he was
Born as-
He's born as a woman.
Woman. Yeah.
He actually takes in his next birth, he's actually born as a woman, right? And he's born as a woman, and he's born in the kingdom of to the king Vidarbha, in the Vidarbha Raja Desha, a king of Vidarbha, not King Vidarbha, king of Vidarbha region. So she's called Vaidarbi because she's born in that region as a king. And they don't talk much about her, right? She's a princess now because he was a king in the previous birth, right? So next birth is also he's in a kingly status. So he's born as a princess, and then she gets married to this person called as Malaya Dwaja, who is the king of the Pandyas. They have 7 sons, they have 1 daughter, that they have descendants, and their daughter gets married to sage Agastya, right? And they have a children and all of that stuff. So there's a little bit of that lineage which you don't have to worry about. Now, this Malaya Dwaja, who this Vaidarbi gets married, he is very, very spiritual in nature, right? So what he does is very similar to how everybody else did it. When he grows up, his children have grown up, his kingdom is there, he renounces his kingdom, he divides his kingdom amongst all his people, and then he decides to leave everything, and then he decides to go to the forest. And in this case, Vaidarbi, also because she's attached to him, right? She's attached to her husband. She also ends up leaving everything because her husband is going to the forest. So she also has no choice. She has to attach herself to him, and she also ends up going to the forest. And they both go to the forest where this Malaya Dwaja, he undergoes severe transformation, right? He does a lot of penance. He does a lot of tapasya. He develops, he gets his senses under control. He doesn't eat anything like how everybody else did, right? So he becomes fully focused on Bhagavan. He completely renounces everything. He's getting control of his senses. He doesn't eat anything. And then with all of that, he starts getting a true understanding of the true nature. So he kind of starts realizing how the soul that is there is different from the material body. And he also starts realizing the connection between the Jivatma and the Paramatma. He realizes everything. He realizes the Paramatma is sitting inside of me. I don't have to do any of the other extra work that I have been doing of even praying or even doing puja, nothing, because I can feel that Paramatma inside of me. So I can directly talk to that Paramatma inside of me. That's the realization that Malaya Dwaja comes. So he's always in a state of meditation, like we saw. So he goes very clearly from austerity to devotion to realization. He gets enlightened. He gets all of that stuff. So once he progresses, then finally, Malaya and Vaidarbi also follows the same thing. Now, Malaya Dwaja, one day, Malaya Dwaja is sitting and meditating. Vaidarbi goes to touch him. She sees that he has become completely, cold, because then she realizes that he's actually passed away in meditation, right? Very similar to how Prithu passed away, right? And so same thing, he also passes away in meditation because he's just exited, his soul has exited the body. Now, in this case, Vaidarbi was blessed because she was also devoted to her husband, who was in the right lane of praying. So she also had renounced all the worldly comfort. She had also dedicated herself to spiritual practice, but she was not as advanced as Malaya Dwaja was. So in the Prithu Charitram, we saw how when Prithu passed away, Archi lit the fire, light up Prithu's body, and Archi gave up her body. But we said she didn't give up her body because she wanted to die. She had already come to the realization, and she had no reason to live because she was ready to the soul was ready to exit the body. So she gave up her body. But in this case, she has a different problem. Vaidarbi loved her husband, And, so she cannot afford to see him die, and he passed away. So what she does is she then decides to jump into that fire, and then she decides to kill herself. So she decides to commit suicide in this case, which was not what Archie did. So I'm just moving a little faster. So now, when she's about to jump into this fire, one Brahmana comes, a mysterious person comes. And this Brahmana suddenly stops her, right? And, he sees that she's just overwhelmed with grief, and then he calms this Vaidarbhi who's there and says that, like, who are you, whose daughter or wife? I see that you're crying in front of a dead body. Who is it? And then she says, I used to be Vaidarbhi. I married to this Malayadwaja. We left everything, came to the forest. He passed away, and I don't have a life beyond my husband. So I'm also going to be jumping into the fire. So he then asks, do you not recognize who I am? And so she says, no, I don't recognize who you are. So she says, I have always been your friend through multiple births, but you just don't seem to remember who I am, right? And she's like, look, I have no idea who you are, right? And then he says that you should remember that there were two swans which used to live in a lake, and these two swans were absolutely in love with each other, living in the same beautiful lake. And they've always been together. They've always been sharing the same place. They've always been together. What happens is one of the swan decided to just leave the other swan and go and forget this, right? And because of which that swan lost the connection. Or this other swan has come back. She says that I am that same person who knew you from your previous birth also. And, I remember who you are. You just don't remember who I am. I can see you through all these different births. And says that you have gone through so many births of sufferings and everything, and you're still not coming to the realization of what you are supposed to do, right? So that Brahmana was none other than the Avijñata, his original friend from the previous birth, right? So this Avijñata, he comes, and then he comes and gives a lot of message to this Vaidarbhi, right? Where he comes and says that, look, a soul, he gives his knowledge about the soul. He says a soul can take a birth as a man, woman, or anything it wants. Its identities keeps changing, but the soul is the same. That's how I know you are the same person. That's how I know you are the same person who was actually there before. And he talks about the knowledge between Jivatma, Paramatma, which I'm going to skip in this case. Now, Narada pauses the story and tells Prachina Barhishat, what I have told you is the most superior knowledge one needs to know to understand anything about this world, anything about this life. All your questions should get answered now. And Prachina Barhishat looks at Narada and says, I have no idea what you're talking about. He says, you told me about a king. You told me about a king Puranjana. You told me about his kingdom. You told me about how he was in love with his wife. You then talked about how he died and how people attacked him. He was in war and all of this. And then he get a second birth. And I have no idea what you're telling, right? So he says, you have to open it up and explain it to me, right? Very clearly. So that's where Narada now actually gets into the true story behind the Puranjonapakyanam, right? Which is in chapter 29. So it's going to get a little complicated, but just follow it slowly. And then at the end of it, you'll get all your answers. So when here, Narada talks, we'll go step by step, right? So you'll understand it. So when Narada says the king Puranjana, he is talking about your Jivatma. That is the soul that is actually there. The Jivatma goes from place to place. It takes different bodies. It first becomes an insect. It could become a fish. Remember, you guys answered the question that Puranjana went into the various Dwarapuris, right? You should lock it in your head. That's why when you have any doubt about soul in the future, always remember the Puranjonapakyanam. The soul decides to go into various bodies. Why? Because it first goes to a one-legged creature. It goes to a one-legged creature. It can experience some things in this world. Its desire increases. Then it wants to go into a bigger body. Desire increases. It keeps on going because it is never happy and satisfied. We ourselves in this body are never happy and satisfied with what we have, right? Even a simple thing you buy, a car, a house, whatever it is, we are never happy. We always want to upgrade it, right? So imagine in the grand scheme of things, the soul is never happy. It always wants more. right? Always wants more in terms of sensory enjoyment, right? Now, that is what he says. The soul finally is jumping through all these bodies, and then it comes to the Navadvara Puri, which is a human body with 9 holes. And I'll talk about it in little detail in a few minutes, right? Which it says is the human body. Finally, it gets a human body. Why? Because it's happy in Navadvara Puri. Puranjana is happy in Navadvara Puri because the Navadvara Puri of the human body gives the best facility for interacting with everything in this world, right? More than a dog can enjoy this world, humans can enjoy this world. More than a fish can, humans can. So that's why Puranjana gets happy settling in Navadvara Puri because he says, this is the best place I can get, right? So soul is now settling into a human body and then gets very happy.
One question, Rajeshri.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question or you want to?
Up to what
Okay.
I've said, absolutely, yeah.
So இங்க வந்து the human body is the ultimate thing of reaching all the pleasures and all the desires.
Talking
but
only in the earthly context. You can become a deva later. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, but from that, இப்ப ஜடபரரே வந்து அவர் மானா பிறந்தார் இல்லையா, because he was longing and he was in, அந்த அதே நினைச்சுட்டு அவரோட உயிர் போனதுனால. So from this one, can they go back, like நம்ம human இதுல இருந்து the soul can go back again as an insect, again as a
absolutely, absolutely. You can go up or you can go down or you can remain the same.
Okay. Appo வந்து there's no desire that went back because desire is going up and up and up, right? So at that point, what happens? Why did it go down then?
Is it related to karma then also?
It's related to the karma and what you want, right? And we'll talk about Jadabharata in detail when we come to the Jadabharata Charitram as to why he became a deer. But in the general context is, if you like, for example, you're just so attached to something and you end up thinking about it, that's what you end up becoming, right? Now, in this case, you're right. The soul, it wants more desire, but the desire was that. The desire doesn't have to be a bigger house, right? The desire could be, I just am in love with this deer. I cannot live without this deer, as an example, right? So in this case, he was just in love with that woman, and the soul, again, there are a lot of rules which determines what you take and what you get in the next birth. But the general rule is the soul always wants more. Or it may not want more. If you are an enlightened soul, you may not want more, right? So it's individual to individual. In this case, this particular soul wanted pleasure. And that's why it ended up with this thing. Reason is that Puranjani, right? So when he meets this Puranjani is the intellect. That's the buddhi, which actually helps you think, the intelligence, right? Now, this buddhi is what is supposed to guide you and orient you in the right direction. Now, this buddhi can get clouded, right? That's what is happening. So that's why this buddhi is influenced. If the buddhi is an intelligent buddhi, which is influenced by spirituality, it is going to point you to spirituality. This Puranjani, what did she tell Puranjana? She says, I also want somebody who can enjoy. I need somebody who can enjoy, right? So what was that buddhi? That buddhi also wanted desire. So essentially, he's getting into a human body because he wants desire. The soul wants desire. It gets a body whose mind is also desirous. Because the mind is just a vehicle through which the soul is going to operate. That's so it gets a body like that. If the soul is very spiritual in nature, it doesn't want anything. It will get a body which is a spiritual, mind-related body. So Puranjana gets Puranjani because they're a perfect match, right? That's why they're a perfect match, right? Now, this Puranjani had 10 friends who are always following her, right? So because those are the 5 Jnanendriyangal, 5 Karmendriyangal, which are there. And she has a 11th bodyguard who is the leader, which is the mind. Because the mind controls the Karmendriyangal and the Jnanendriyangal. The mind is what tells, I like to eat this, I don't like to eat this, I'm feeling this heat, I'm getting all of these things. So you have to think of the layers, the Karmendriyangal, Jnanendriyangal, the mind is coming on top. That's why that 11th guy is taking care of the 10 people. But Puranjani is on top because Puranjani is the intellect. The intellect can still tell, I know you want to eat that sweet, but you are on a diet, so don't eat. So the mind, the intellect can still override the mind, right? That's why all of these people are supporting Puranjani, and Puranjani is the overarching person on this thing. Then the 5-hooded serpent that we actually saw there. The 5-hooded serpent are the Pancha Pranas, which are actually there. So we have Prana, Apana, the Vayu with the various Vayus, which is there, but the life, the whole breath, the Prana of which is holding the body. That's why that 5-hooded snake is taking care of Navadvarapuri. Because what is taking care of this body? The prana. The moment your prana stops, the body is gone, right? So that's why the five-hooded snake is taking care of that Navadvarapuri. We said the Panchala kingdom. The Panchala kingdom is the environment, because the Navadvarapuri is situated in Panchala, right? So the environment we live in, Navadvarapuri enjoys the environment I live in. So it's a kingdom, because if I want to enjoy, but I am not living in this place, I go live in the forest, let's say in a small cottage, I cannot enjoy, right? So I'm living in the US because I have access to all these sensory enjoyments I want. So that the Panchalam is the environment in which that Navadvarapuri is there, which is in this earthly realm, the country or the thing that is actually there. Okay. So continuing this. Okay, that is the material word. Now, the city, the 9 gates that we actually talked about, right? So the 9 gates are the 9 openings. So the 5 front gates, and when you look at the picture, right, we kind of said there are 5 gates which are on the east side. If you look at the image I sent you, so you have 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, and 1 mouth. So they are all facing one side, right? Then we have one going north, one going south. Those are the 2 ears. Right, so these are the 7 gates which are above the terrain. I said the 7 gates above the terrain, and we said the 2 gates which are subterranean gates. The 2 subterranean gates are your genitals and the anus, right, the rectum, which are actually there. So those are the 2 things. And so the living body enters into the city, which has got these 9 gates, and each of these gates, and next one, each of these gates, we had various friends that they were actually there, right? For each of the gates had a name. So the gate was Katyota and Avirmukhi, which are the 2 eyes. And he said he used to go with a friend to enjoy in a certain place. That's what we said. So what do you do with your eyes? You go with your eyes to go see the entire world. So he's actually going and seeing all the world with his friend. The friend is the vision, because the vision is the friend through which the eyes actually sees the world. Then your nostrils, Nalini and Nalini. So Nalini and Nalini, he goes everywhere and enjoys the world with his friend. With the friend is the aroma, because you can smell everything. So it's each of these things. The friends are the purpose, what he's actually doing and what he's actually doing. Then you have your asuri, your genitals, and your anus for enjoyment, procreation, and elimination, right? So those are the Navadwarams which are actually there in that particular thing. So then your right ear, right? So the right ear and the left ear, the difference is the way they separate it out is you can use your ear for 2 things. One, you can use your ear to hear about all the luxury things which they keep talking about, and you can go into a material world. That's one ear. Another ear, you can hear all the spiritual things and you can actually get enlightened. So that's why the 2 ears are going in the opposite direction. One is going north, one is going south. Because one can actually get you uplifted and enlightened. Another ear can get you down into material world, depending on what you're putting into the ear. And then he has 2 blind associates, we said. The blind associates are your hands and legs. Why are they blind? Because the hands and legs cannot do things on their own. Right? The mind and the brain has to tell, I want to walk, I want to run. That's when they can do. So they're blind. They just go wherever you tell them to go. That's why they're blind. And then the Antapura, he says, I go in, and he goes and enjoys with this thing everywhere, right? So you can think of your heart or your mind, whatever you want, because you can sit in your place. You don't have to go through your Nalini, Nalini, go smell anything. You don't have to go with your eyes and go see any place. You can sit in your house, lie down in your bed, and just imagine whatever you want, and all your senses can get satisfied. That is the Antapura. So he can just sit in his house and use his mind and his heart and enjoy everything that is there. So those are the various things which are actually, on this thing. Now, we come to the critical portion of how Puranjana is attached to the queen, right? So we said Puranjana doesn't ever acted independently. He was always doing whatever his queen was doing. If the queen was happy, he felt happy. If she was distressed, he was feeling distressed, right? So he did not have independent judgment. He was always following him. So because Puranjana is the soul and the queen is the intellect or the buddhi, the soul in itself, remember I told you, you answered the question. Puranjana can exist independent of Puranjani. Your soul can exist on its own without getting attached to your intellect or the buddhi. But when the soul gets attached to Puranjani, which is the intellect, and if the intellect is telling you, I need more things, you need to go buy a better car, you need more money, you need more things in work, the soul gets sucked into it. It gets so dependent on this intellect, it is not able to override it. So because that intellect that is there is getting influenced with all this attached from the time you're born, it is seeing all these things constantly. Your mind is getting hindered, right? So the intellect can actually change however it wants and then guide your soul wherever it wants, right? So the other example you can think of it is if you're wearing glasses. If you wear a red glass, everything you see is red, although nothing outside is red, right? If your glass is cloudy, everything outside looks cloudy and unclear to you. What do you do then? You clean up your glass, right? So similarly, if everything you're getting so attached to desires and everything, your soul is getting attached to it because that's what your mind intellect is telling you. That's what your buddhi is telling you. If you clean up your buddhi, then your soul naturally will start going towards where the buddhi is telling it to go because it is so dependent on it. Unless you are enlightened and you realize that the soul is independent of the buddhi, then you are not going to get dependent on the buddhi. But we are all dependent on our buddhi. So the way we have to do is we have to clean up our glasses, which is clean up that intellect to not get attached to material things. That is the thing. So the clouded intelligence, which is there, which is the buddhi, which is Puranjani, led him towards material life. If it's more purified, then it's going to let you towards spiritual life. So it's up to us how to clean the buddhi. Yeah, go ahead, Ramesh.
No, you said mind and intellect. Same way,
Two different. Yeah.
Heart and the mind, right? Or the
Heart
brain.
is a physical organ.
Okay.
Heart and brain are physical organs which are required for the body to function. Mind and intellect are not physical in nature.
Okay.
Rajesh, ஒரு கேள்வி இருக்கு. இப்போ இங்க வந்து we're talking about mind, intellect, and then the soul as listening to the whatever the mind and intellect is telling them. What happens to we see people who don't have that kind of intellect, right? Like they are இப்போ எப்படி சொல்றது born with some deformity or whatever, right? How do you think about their soul? Because they are not able to do anything by themselves.
The soul is always the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay? But the soul decides that it needs to get into a body like that for any number of reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, it could be any number of reasons. I'm not saying that they have done some pavam. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I know.
The soul feels the right next step for it is to experience something which requires that kind of a body, because you could have bodily deformities or you could have mental deformities, right? So the soul decides that the Navadvara Puri I want to get into is this type of Navadvara Puri, which is God, and the Puranjani is this type. So you have to think of it that way. It intentionally picks for a reason.
Okay, but that is fine. That soul is fine. But the parents who have to take care of that soul, right? Like, what about their soul? Like, how
it's
is
a very
that
complicated thing because all these are connected, So all these are connected. If you are born to your parents, it is not by luck. It's your karma, their karma, all of which has to come together. If you're friend with me, also there is some karma because of which you are a friend with me. So it's a very complicated karmic relationship which is there, right? So it's not a simple answer why that is. It's very complicated. You'll always have some karmic relationship because of which you come into contact with somebody. It's not by luck.
But action is what kind of gets you that karmic thing, right? So if the soul, if the person I'm talking about, that soul is not able to do anything, there's no karmic action done by the soul, where will that accumulation of karma happen for that?
In that case, if you're like completely, I'm bedridden, hypothetically, I'm completely bedridden, and I'm not able to think at all, let's say, I'm not adding any karma. I'm just wiping away. I'm just suffering though, right? I'm suffering because I'm still burning away something. Everything is, every act, even every experience you're having is essentially burning some karma out. It's either good karma you're burning or a bad karma you're burning. So you are, even if I'm sleeping in the bed and I'm mentally challenged and I can't do anything, I'm always burning some karma. But the good thing is I'm not accumulating new karma because I'm not able to go and walk and do things, and I'm not able to think. So I'm not adding new karma. So it is one way you could think of it. I'm not saying exactly. It's one way you could think of it as it is wiping out karma and not adding new karma in that state.
Actually, this was one of the answers that Kanchi Mahaperiva had given when he was asked why was somebody born blind or something like that. So he won't accumulate any karma through his
And we're
wish.
going to see that with more about Jada Bharata and all. We'll get into more of it at that time, So just and there's a lot more left in this, which we may not have time today to go through. So this chariot incident that Puranjana goes into, which is essentially all it's talking about is you go out into the world to experience stuff, right? That's what this is. The chariot was just the body again, right? The body which is going to the forest. The forest is a place where there are a lot of sensory enjoyments. All the animals or all the things. You go to the mall, you can eat what you want, you can drink what you want, you can buy what you want. So the mall is like a forest, right? And you going to the mall is like this person going in a chariot, which is actually going into the mall, right? Very simple. You can read through it later. When he's going and hunting, and Puranjana went hunting, right? Essentially, what he did is he goes without his mind. Remember, he went without Puranjani, right? What it means is sometimes, you go without, you pursue things without thinking, right? You just go and you end up doing it because I just want to do it, right? And your mind may say no, or you don't even think about what your mind is thinking. You just blindly go and do things, right? That's what Puranjana ends up doing. When he went into hunting without Puranjani, you think of all the things you do without thinking where you're pursuing desires, right? That's the first thing. Then he goes and kills all these animals that we spoke about, right? So those are all the unnecessary attachments that we accumulate because we actually don't think about any of those things. So it actually all creates negative karma because you're pursuing so many things you're not thinking. And what happened to Puranjana when that happened? His queen got very disturbed, right? Queen was lying down on the floor. Why? Imagine you went on an eating spree without thinking. You feel guilt, right? At 11 o'clock, I went and had that big plate of biryani because I didn't think. And when you come back, your mind is beating you, saying, why did you do that? Right? That is Puranjani getting upset because you didn't ask me. You didn't take me along, because I would have told you, don't eat that biryani at 11 o'clock at night. Right? So that is an example of how the body decides to just go. Sometimes you just wants to do things without consulting the mind or the intellect. And then what happens when he comes back, he's apologizing. He's saying, I'm sorry. Next time I want to eat biryani at 11 o'clock, I will first think before I actually do that. Right? So that's why he's apologizing to Puranjani and saying that I will next time get your advice. I will always take you along. But the problem here is the mind, which is Puranjani, is also materially inclined. So she says, okay, but the next day she'll say, let both of us go and eat biryani. Right? So that's the problem with this Puranjani, right? Was because that intellect or the mind, which the soul got into the body, is also material in nature. So while you may think about, you will say, yeah, I still want to go eat it. You may still think to go eat it. That was the problem Puranjana was getting stuck into, is he got into it, which is also material in nature, because of which he started wanting to do more and more sensory enjoyments, right? So anyway, we'll stop here because next one is going to talk about Chandavega and all of them and the final things and what happens in the next birth, right? How he advances, how the soul advances to the next birth. We'll cover in the next class because it's
So
29 is a very long
how do you
chapter.
associate the friend with this whole thing? I think is that the Paramatma?
Yeah,
That's
that
the
is it's going to
Paramatma,
come later,
Avignata.
but that Avijnata is the unknown person. Avijnata, I cannot understand because nobody can understand Paramatma. Nobody knows where Paramatma came from. Nobody knows who Paramatma is, but that Paramatma was always with Puranjana, right? He was always with the soul. Remember the story is that whenever he called, Avijnata came to help. But when he got so attached to Puranjani, which is the intellect which is driving all these material desires, he's getting so sucked into all these material things that he's not remembering about Avijnata. So that is what is happening in Puranjana. But I will tell next class, we'll cover why Avijnata came back when Vaidarbi was about to jump into the fire, right? We'll cover it in the next class. So
Beautifully explained,
ரொம்ப
Rajan.
நல்லா இருந்தது
ரொம்ப
ராஜேஷ்.
நல்லா இருந்தது. The
இந்த மைண்ட் அண்ட்
insightful.
இன்டெலெக்ட்டுக்கே ஒரு தனி கிளாஸ் வேணும்னு நினைக்கிறேன்.
Exactly. It's been
Exactly.
lay
for all
man,
the
lay
time
woman
and
கூட
So
புரிஞ்சுது. It was so
mesmerizing.
nice.
அந்த இப்போ அந்த எங்களோட சம்பிரதாயத்துல வந்து இந்த கடைசி டெத் பீரியட்ல வந்து வி won't ரிமெம்பர் பெருமாள் இல்ல. ஸோ தே வில் சே அன்னைக்கு இப்போதே சொல்லி வச்சேன்னு நம்ம நன்னா இருக்கச்சவே பெருமாள் கிட்ட சொல்லிடணுமா, என்ன நீ வந்து என்னோட கடைசி காலத்துல உன்கிட்ட எடுத்துன்னு போன்னு. தட்ஸ் வாட் எங்க ஆல் அவர் ஆன்சர் ஆச்சாரியாஸ் வில் டெல் யூ ஃபார் தட் டே யூ டெல் நவ் இட் செல்ஃப் டு பெருமாள்.
இல்ல
But
அந்த
that is they
காந்திஜி
say that
லாஸ்ட்ல
so
தானே
that you
நாராயணா
remember it.
சொல்லணுன்ற. You say like you should have thought about நாராயணா லாஸ்ட். அப்ப வந்து வைஃப் பத்தியோ ஹஸ்பண்ட் பத்தியோ குழந்தை பத்தியோ அடுத்த பர்த்ல அந்த மாதிரி வந்துடுவோமா?
That's why they say that இப்பலேருந்தே நாராயண நாராயண சொல்லி that becomes
அதை
your
இப்பயே சொல்லி
habit
வச்சுடு,
goes
நல்லா
ahead,
இருக்கு
right? அது
சொல்லுங்க.
habit போயிடும்.
Now
அப்பதான்
itself
எந்த நேரம்
practice
வேணாலும்
so that
மனசுல
you'll remember last time.
Yeah, you can
Exactly.
tell the kids to remind you when you're in deathbed.
I think we're going to see Ajamilopakyanam. We're going to see,
Yes.
other about Jadabharata. All of that will tell us. To Vijaya's point, they keep telling from now itself, because you keep telling it every day.
Mind will get used to
Your
it.
mind will get used to it, and then at a time of it, you will remember that. It has to come implicitly. It cannot be an explicit thought. The moment it is explicit, then you lose it, right? And the
Yeah.
reason I was asking you all those questions earlier was, I think, you have to, this story, one time you hear, you're not going to get it, okay? You got to hear the story like 3 times, 5 times. அப்படியே அது ஊறணும் மனசுல. So anytime you have a question, it's very simple. You just go think what happened to the Puranjonapakyanam. Just think of that story. And then you will be able to get the answer, because that story is so beautifully written that every answer you want about how the soul and the mind and the intellect and Paramatma and how the soul is going to advance, how Paramatma is going to come and help, all of that connects to that story very directly. There's no waste stuff in that story. It's all useful stuff which is actually there in that story, right?
See,
Of course, with some masala.
every skandam seems to have some kind of a fundamental principle behind it, right? A message behind it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it is to understand and realization, right? And they keep telling it to you over 18,000 stanzas in different ways. So hopefully at the end of that, it'll get in you, right? It'll absolutely, you'll understand it and realize it at that point. That is the whole goal. So with a lot more
எல்லாம் படிச்சா கூட திருப்பி போய் அதே தான் பண்ணுவோம். நீங்க இப்ப சொன்னீங்களே அந்த ஸ்வீட்டை சாப்பிடக்கூடாது.
Okay, see, the point is, it's okay, but at least you are more informed today than you were yesterday.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very true.
Right. So that's all you have to think. You cannot go to 0 to 100. If you were 10 yesterday, are you 10.5 today? That's all.
Still that same action, or that's what we are doing, whether we are informed or not.
Because it's very difficult to give up what
மசில்
you know.
மெமரியில அதே இருக்கு.
Exactly, because this is accumulated over so many births.
But
If you-
it is
Past
also
impressions.
because we came in to do this, right, Rajesh? So we came in, we got this birth to do certain things, right?
Correct.
So even we train our memory to not do this, end of the day we are going to do that, right? அப்படி இல்லையா அந்த
No,
ரிலேஷன்ஷிப்?
no,
Sweet sappama.
you didn't land up in Bhagavatham class by chance, right? You didn't land in it by chance, right? So
Yeah.
this was something your soul wanted to get something out of this, which said this was important for me to know and get this knowledge and advance a bit more. That's where you are in the, or you're learning Bhagavatam, or you're learning anything else, or Gita for that matter, right? So you didn't land in it by chance. Now you still have free will, because you could still decide, I'm not going to join the class and I can do something else. Right?
So,
that is still free will that you have. So the karma that you have done is going to put you in a position where it is going to give you something, but you could choose not to act on it.
Okay.
So அப்பதான் நம்ம வந்து அந்த பெருமாளை வேண்டிக்கணும்.
That's when we'll have to keep ourselves in the right path.
Exactly. So that's why, that's why it's important. That's why I said that glass, if the glass is clouded, the intellect is clouded, then you're going to, everything is going to look cloudy for you. So the way you got to do that is you got to clean that glass. So the way, because that the only way is to purify your mind. So the more you purify your mind, then the mind will also, the intellect, not the mind, the more you purify it, it is going to point you in the right direction.
But இதுல ஒண்ணே ஒரு கேள்வி இருக்கு. So if every soul has its own purpose and its own path of free will, how do we, I mean, not influence, I'm using the wrong word here, as a Bhagavata, the satsangamnala, we get influenced by others and we also follow the same right, whatever path, right, the correct path. It happens not by us trying to do something, it happens just because of the connection with other similar people who are in that path? அந்த மாதிரி பாகவதாஸ்
Yeah, and it's connected, right? Like, because your soul says, I want to become more spiritual, right? So if your soul wants it, the things will come your way. So you'll get association with the Bhagavatas. Now, you could decide, I don't want to associate with these Bhagavatas and I want to go do something else. That is still free will to you, that you decide, right?
There was Priya, you must have seen. There is saying that, the real freedom is to not to do what you can do. Then I asked Swamiji one time, why it is that? See, when a lot of things are restricted, we are not able to do. But when we can do it. At that time, not to do that, how it becomes a freedom. Then he said, see, your mind has to be so perfect or controlled that, yes, you can do it, but still you won't do it. That kind of a control, you should get it. That is the real freedom you are giving to yourself. That's what Swamiji explained. Then I said, okay, it's a different perspective. So same thing.
And the mind and like you have to treat them differently. That'll get into technical, between mind and intellect, because like they said, it's the intellect you can control. The intellect can control the mind. Okay. So the mind will always want things, right? And
இன்டெலெக்ட்ங்கிறது புத்தி, மைண்ட்ங்கிறது
manasu.
emotions.
No, mind is whatever the senses bring to.
It controls all the senses.
Yeah,
Whatever
mind.
the senses want, what the senses like, what the senses should do, all of that is controlled by the mind. But like you feel like eating something, laddu, because your mind is telling you want to eat laddu, because the mind is conditioned to say, I like laddu, I ate it last time, I like this motichur laddu. That's your mind telling. But your intellect can always step in, which is Puranjani, and say, don't do it. But if your intellect is not it, then you're going to go eat up a lot of laddus, right? Like we said. So that's why you have to start. If you want to scientifically analyze this, you got to understand very specifically mind and intellect, how to control each of it. That is a scientific way of looking at it. Or you could just take a simple way and said, I have to keep my intellect and my mind pure. And the way I keep it pure is, and it's going to say again in that, satsangam with Bhagavatas, and I load it with more spiritual stuff, then it is not going to go in other directions. Then I don't have to worry about the mechanism of how it works.
Correct. It comes naturally.
It'll come naturally. Yeah. So you can either take a technical approach, scientific approach, or you can just take a simplistic approach and just do it this way also. Either it's going to accomplish the same thing. So
that's why everybody's
last question is Avijnata same, the Paramatma all through your different births?
Yeah. The same Paramatma who's there. That's why I said, remember in the future, we said two swans sitting together. He says that we two are the two swans, which is the Jivatma and the Paramatma, who are exactly the same. We are no different, except that the Paramatma knows it's the Paramatma, and the Jivatma doesn't realize it is also part of the Paramatma, and it's going away from this Paramatma, saying bye to that swan and going and trying to explore the world.
Rajesh, I have a question. Does the Bhagavatam say that the Jivatma is part of the Paramatma? So does it follow the Sankhyan approach?
Yeah, I mean, essentially in the Jivatma and the Paramatma is like, it's Paramatma is inside the Jivatma. No, I'm not talking in terms of structure, right? I'm just saying it's all just one. The Paramatma is inside the Jivatma. There's no difference. The same Paramatma is in me as it is in you.
Correct.
Okay, that's, we talked about the layers in Sankhya philosophy. We talked about the Mahat, which is the supreme consciousness. So that is the same for everybody. We are all drops of bubble which came from the same ocean. We are all drops of Jivatma which came from the same Mahat. But then we all have the layers of Ahankara. We have the Karmendriyas, Jnanendriyas, Tanmatras, and the Panchabhutas. All of that on top. So it all looks different. Your desires are different from mine. You look different than me. But when you start tracing it all back to the core Jivatma, even you remove the layer of Ahankara, which is the individuality out, it is the same drop of water that came from the same ocean.
That is Advaita then, right?
No, it is all part of the same thing though. It came from the same thing. It just looks different because of the layer of Ahankara. The moment you remove the layer of Ahankara, it is all universal consciousness. Everything is the same.
இது உள்புறம் திருப்பி பார் அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி உள்ள திருப்பி சொல்றாளே ரமண மகரிஷி சொல்வாரு உன்கிட்டயே இருக்கு அத வந்து
that's what this Malayadwaja does, right? He realizes that I don't have to go anywhere. I don't even have to pray, because I can talk to the Paramatma inside of me, because he's able to communicate with the Paramatma inside of him. So he's come to the realization and he's doing it. Once you do that, you don't have to look for it outside.
Correct.
But
Tattvamasi.
Dvayam வந்து எப்படின்னா it says that Paramatma and Jivatma are two
Yes.
different things,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Paramatma
Jivatma is
has
looking
more you know
Jivatma is part
So
of the
you
part
know,
of
Paramatma.
you're
that.
right in
Yeah,
the sense
part
that,
and whole.
yeah, yeah. If you think of it, of course there are differences, right?
Yeah,
And what I
yeah,
mean by that is there are differences between Jivatma and Paramatma. Right? The Paramatma can do whole bunch of things with the
Yeah,
Jivatma
that-
cannot. So there are differences. But what I mean by they are the same is that Paramatma is part of the Jivatma inside. The same Paramatma, like I said, which is in every cell of your body, has the same Paramatma. Not just you. Every cell of your body has a Paramatma inside of it, which is the same Paramatma, which is the same Paramatma who's also outside of this entire Brahmandam also, right? That was the fourth Chatushloki Bhagavatam. That was the first thing he said is, I am there inside every subatomic particle. At the same time, I'm outside of the entire Brahmandam also. So you cannot understand how that is possible, but that is what it is. Right? அதனால ரொம்ப இது பண்ண முடியாது, கான்டெம்ப்ளேட் பண்ண
Rajesh, we have to take
முடியாது.
Saptaham for this stories only, like every week after week.
ரிட்டையர்
நிஜமா
ஆனக்கப்புறம்
ஸ்டோரிஸ் கேட்கும் போதுதான் ரொம்ப நல்லா இருக்கு ராஜேஷ்.
Yeah, it's very nice. Correct.
I know.
Yes, Rajesh.
Bhagavatam, you have to appreciate the stories. So
Thank you,
Well
Rajesh.
spent,
Thank you for
Hare
all the
Thank you.
Namaha, Sri
Thank
Hare Namaha, Sri Hare Namaha, Gopika Jeevana Smaranam, Govinda Govinda, Sadgurunath Maharaj ki jai, Kahena Vacha Manasendriyerva, Buddhyatmana va Prakrute Swabhavat, Karomi Yatyat Sakalam Parasmai Narayanaiti Samarpayami.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Rajesh.
Rajesh.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Rajesh.
Bye everyone.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you
Bye
so
everyone.
much, Rajesh. Yeah.
Bye bye.